The Dark Night of the Soul
by St. John of the Cross. Book 2, Chapter 15, sets down the second stanza and its exposition. In darkness and secure, by the secret ladder disguised, O happy chance! In darkness and concealment, my house being now at rest. In this stanza the soul still continues to sing of certain properties of the darkness of this night, reiterating how great is the happiness which came to it through them. It speaks of them in replying to a certain tacit objection, saying that it is not to be supposed that, because in this night and darkness it has passed through so many tempests of afflictions, doubts, fears, and horrors, as has been said, it has for that reason run any risk of being lost. On the contrary, it says, in the darkness of this night it has gained itself. For in the night it has freed itself and escaped subtly from its enemies, who were continually hindering its progress. For in the darkness of the night it changed its garments, and disguised itself with 3 liveries and colors, which we shall describe hereafter, and went forth by a very secret ladder, which none in the house knew, the which ladder, as we shall observe likewise in the proper place, is living faith. By this ladder the soul went forth in such complete hiding and concealment, in order the better to execute its purpose, that it could not fail to be in great security. Above all, since in this purgative night the desires, affections, and passions of the soul are put to sleep, mortified, and quenched, which are those that, when they were awake and alive, consented not to this. The first line, then, runs thus: in darkness and secure. Chapter 16 explains how, though in darkness, the soul walks securely. The darkness which the soul here describes relates, as we have said, to the desires and faculties, sensual, interior, and spiritual. For all these are darkened in this night as to their natural light, so that being purged in this respect, they may be illumined with respect to the supernatural. For the spiritual and sensual desires are put to sleep and mortified, so that they can experience nothing, either divine or human. The affections of the soul are oppressed and constrained, so that they can neither move nor find support in anything. The imagination is bound, and can make no useful reflection. The memory is gone. The understanding is in darkness, unable to understand anything. And hence the will, likewise, is arid and constrained, and all the faculties are void and useless. And in addition to all this, a thick and heavy cloud is upon the soul, keeping it in affliction, and as it were, far away from God. It is in this kind of darkness that the soul says here it traveled securely. The reason for this has been clearly expounded, for ordinarily the soul never strays save through its desires, or its tastes, or its reflections, or its understanding, or its affections. For as a rule it has too much or too little of these, or they vary and go astray, and hence the soul becomes inclined to that which behooves it not. Wherefore, when all these operations and motions are hindered, it is clear that the soul is secure against being led astray by them, for it is free not only from itself, but likewise from its other enemies, which are the world and the devil. For when the affections and operations of the soul are quenched, these enemies cannot make war upon it by any other means, or in any other manner. It follows from this that the greater is the darkness wherein the soul journeys, and the more completely is it voided of its natural operations, the greater is its security. For as the prophet says, perdition comes to the soul from itself alone, that is, from its sensual and interior desires and operations. And good, says God, comes from me alone. Wherefore, when it is thus hindered from following the things that lead it into evil, there will then come to it forthwith the blessings of union with God in its desires and faculties, which in that union he will make divine and celestial. Hence, at the time of this darkness, if the soul considers the matter, it will see very clearly how little its desire and its faculties are being diverted to things that are useless and harmful, and how secure it is from vainglory and pride and presumption, vain and false rejoicing, and many other things. It follows clearly, then, that by walking in darkness, not only is the soul not lost, but it is even greatly gained, since it is here gaining the virtues. But there is a question which at once arises here, namely, since the things of God are of themselves profitable to the soul and bring it gain and security, why does God in this night darken the desires and faculties with respect to these good things, likewise in such a way that the soul can no more taste of them or busy itself with them than with these other things, and indeed in some ways can do so less? The answer is that it is well for the soul to perform no operation touching spiritual things at that time, and to have no pleasure in such things, because its faculties and desires are base, impure, and wholly natural. And thus, although these faculties be given the desire and interest in things supernatural and divine, they could not receive them, save after a base and natural manner, exactly in their own fashion. For as the philosopher says, whatsoever is received comes to him that receives it after the manner of the recipient. Wherefore, since these natural faculties have neither purity, nor strength, nor capacity to receive, and taste things that are supernatural after the manner of those things, which manner is divine, but can do so only after their own manner, which is human and base, as we have said, it is meet that its faculties be in darkness concerning these divine things likewise. Thus, being weaned and purged and annihilated in this respect first of all, they may lose that base and human way of receiving and acting, and thus all these faculties and desires of the soul may come to be prepared and tempered in such a way as to be able to receive, feel, and taste that which is divine and supernatural after a lofty and sublime manner, which is impossible if the old man die not first of all. Hence it follows that all spiritual things, if they come not from above and be not communicated by the Father of lights to human desire and free will, howsoever much a man may exercise his taste and faculties for God, and howsoever much it may seem to the faculties that they are experiencing these things, will not be experienced after a divine and spiritual manner, but after a human and natural manner, just as other things are experienced. For spiritual blessings go not from man to God, but come from God to man. With respect to this, if this were the proper place for it, we might here explain how there are many persons whose many tastes and affections, and the operations of whose faculties, are fixed upon God or upon spiritual things, and who may perhaps think that this is supernatural and spiritual, when it is perhaps no more than the most human and natural desires and actions. They regard these good things with the same disposition as they have for other things, by means of a certain natural facility which they possess for directing their desires and faculties to anything whatever. If perchance we find occasion elsewhere in this book, we shall treat of this, describing certain signs which indicate when the interior actions and motions of the soul, with respect to communion with God, are only natural, when they are spiritual, and when they are both natural and spiritual. It suffices for us here to know that, in order that the interior motions and acts of the soul may come to be moved by God divinely, they must first be darkened and put to sleep, and hushed to rest naturally, as touching all their capacity and operation, until they have no more strength. Therefore, O spiritual soul, when thou seest thy desire obscured, thy affections arid and constrained, and thy faculties bereft of their capacity for any interior exercise, be not afflicted by this, but rather consider it a great happiness, since God is freeing thee from thyself and taking the matter from thy hands. For with those hands, howsoever well they may serve thee, thou wouldst never labor so effectively, so perfectly, and so securely, because of their clumsiness and uncleanness, as now, when God takes thy hand and guides thee in the darkness, as though thou wert blind, to an end and by a way which thou knowest not, nor couldst thou ever hope to travel with the aid of thine own eyes and feet, howsoever good thou be as a walker. The reason, again, why the soul not only travels securely when it travels thus in the darkness, but also achieves even greater gain and progress, is that usually when the soul is receiving fresh advantage and profit, this comes by a way that it least understands. Indeed, it quite commonly believes that it is losing ground. For as it has never experienced that new feeling which drives it forth and dazzles it and makes it depart recklessly from its former way of life, it thinks itself to be losing ground rather than gaining and progressing, since it sees that it is losing with respect to that which it knew and enjoyed, and is going by a way which it knows not, and wherein it finds no enjoyment. It is like the traveler, who in order to go to new and unknown lands, takes new roads, unknown and untried, and journeys unguided by his past experience, but doubtingly and according to what others say. It is clear that such a man could not reach new countries or add to his past experience if he went not along new and unknown roads, and abandoned those which were known to him. Exactly so, one who is learning fresh details concerning any office or art always proceeds in darkness, and receives no guidance from his original knowledge, for if he left not that behind, he would get no farther, nor make any progress. And in the same way, when the soul is making most progress, it is traveling in darkness, knowing nothing. Wherefore, since God, as we have said, is the master and guide of this blind soul, it may well and truly rejoice, once it has learned to understand this, and say, "In darkness and secure." There is another reason why the soul has walked securely in this darkness, and this is because it has been suffering. For the road of suffering is more secure and even more profitable than that of fruition and action. First, because in suffering the strength of God is added to that of man, while in action and fruition the soul is practicing its own weaknesses and imperfections. And second, because in suffering the soul continues to practice and acquire the virtues, and become purer, wiser, and more cautious. But there is another and more important reason why the soul now walks in darkness, and securely. This emanates from the dark light or wisdom aforementioned. For in such a way does this dark night of contemplation absorb and immerse the soul in itself, and so near does it bring the soul to God that it protects and delivers it from all that is not God. For this soul is now, as it were, undergoing a cure, in order that it may regain its health being God himself. His Majesty restricts it to a diet and abstinence from all things, and takes away its appetite for them all. It is like a sick man who, if he is respected by those in his house, is carefully tended so that he may be cured. The air is not allowed to touch him, nor may he even enjoy the light, nor must he hear footsteps, nor yet the noise of those in the house. And he is given food that is very delicate and bland, and even that only in great moderation, food that is nourishing rather than delectable. All these particularities, which are for the security and safe keeping of this soul, are caused by this dark contemplation, because it brings the soul nearer to God. For the nearer the soul approaches him, the blacker is the darkness which it feels, and the deeper is the obscurity which comes through its weakness. Just as the nearer a man approaches the sun, the greater are the darkness and the affliction caused him through the great splendor of the sun, and through the weakness and impurity of his eyes. In the same way, so immense is the spiritual light of God, and so greatly does it transcend our natural understanding, that the nearer we approach it, the more it blinds and darkens us. And this is the reason why, in Psalm 17, David says that God made darkness his hiding place and covering, and his tabernacle around him dark water in the clouds of the air. This dark water in the clouds of the air is dark contemplation and divine wisdom in souls, as we are saying. They continue to feel it is a thing which is near him, as the tabernacle wherein he dwells, when God brings them ever nearer to himself. And thus, that which in God is supreme light and refulgence is to man blackest darkness, as St. Paul says, according as David explains in the same psalm, saying, "Because of the brightness which is in his presence, past clouds and cataracts." That is to say, over the natural understanding, the light whereof, as Isaiah says in chapter 5, ob tenebrata est in caligine eius. Oh, miserable is the fortune of our life, which is lived in such great peril, and wherein it is so difficult to find the truth. For that which is most clear and true is to us most dark and doubtful. Wherefore, though it is the thing which is most needful for us, we flee from it. And that which gives the greatest light and satisfaction to our eyes, we embrace and pursue, though it be the worst thing for us, and make us fall at every step. In what peril and fear does man live, since the very natural light of his eyes, by which he has to guide himself, is the first light that dazzles him and leads him astray on his road to God? And if he is to know with certainty by what road he travels, he must perforce keep his eyes closed and walk in darkness, that he may be secure from the enemies who inhabit his own house, that is, his senses and faculties. Well hidden, then, and well protected is the soul in these dark waters when it is close to God. For as these waters serve as a tabernacle and dwelling place for God himself, they will serve the soul in the same way, and for a perfect protection and security, though it remain in darkness, wherein, as we have said, it is hidden and protected from itself, and from all evils that come from creatures. For to such the words of David refer in another psalm, where he says, "Thou shalt hide them in the hiding place of thy face from the disturbance of men. Thou shalt protect them in thy tabernacle from the contradiction of tongues." Herein we understand all kinds of protection, for to be hidden in the face of God from the disturbance of men is to be fortified with this dark contemplation against all the chances which may come upon the soul from men. And to be protected in his tabernacle from the contradiction of tongues is for the soul to be engulfed in these dark waters, which are the tabernacle of David whereof we have spoken. Wherefore, since the soul has all its desires and affections weaned and its faculties set in darkness, it is free from all imperfections which contradict the spirit, whether they come from its own flesh or from other creatures. Wherefore this soul may well say that it journeys in darkness and secure. There is likewise another reason, which is no less effectual than the last, by which we may understand how the soul journeys securely in darkness. It is derived from the fortitude by which the soul is at once inspired in these obscure and afflictive dark waters of God. For after all, though the waters be dark, they are none the less waters, and therefore they cannot but refresh and fortify the soul in that which is most needful for it, although in darkness and with affliction. For the soul immediately perceives in itself a genuine determination and an effectual desire to do nothing which it understands to be an offense to God, and to omit to do nothing that seems to be for his service. For that dark love cleaves to the soul, causing it a most watchful care and an inward solicitude concerning that which it must do, or must not do, for his sake, in order to please him. It will consider and ask itself 1,000 times if it has given him cause to be offended, and all this it will do with much greater care and solicitude than before, as has already been said with respect to the yearnings of love. For here all the desires and energies and faculties of the soul are recollected from all things else, and its effort and strength are employed in pleasing its God alone. After this manner the soul goes forth from itself and from all created things to the sweet and delectable union of love of God, in darkness and secure. End of chapter 16. And thus that which is in God, that